If you are a journal lover, don't skip this. This episode is brought to you by the Cast Your Cares Guided Journal. Cast Your Cares is a guided journal for Christian women who are seeking to build confidence, fight anxiety, and stop overthinking using the Word of God. If you've been feeling like your thoughts have been all over the place and you've really been wanting to build the habit of consistent time with God, this is the perfect tool for you. To see the Cast Your Cares journal for yourself and what's included, you can click the link in the show notes. Now let's get into the episode. You're listening to the Organize My Thoughts podcast, where we teach you how to get out of your head so you can execute the vision. I am your host, Kyla Jackson. Let's get started. Hello, family, and welcome back to another episode of the Organize My Thoughts podcast. I hope you all are having an amazing week. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about building your momentum after life hits. And specifically when I say after life hits, that could be like a major transition. It could be a death in your family. It could be a job loss. It could be you're moving. It could be you just had a mental breakdown. It could be even something that you're stepping outside of your comfort zone. So there's all these different disruptions to our daily life that could impact our momentum, right? Whether we were started a morning routine and then, something happened and we had to readjust, or maybe you started your business idea and then all of a sudden things started going crazy in your family, right? Like, we are people and we are not in control of the things that happen in our future. We have a general plan of how we want things to work out. And sometimes interruptions that we did not plan happen. That's what an interruption is. It's something that you did not plan for, something that you did not see coming, but it does affect your momentum. And so this episode is specifically for anybody who has been having trouble kind of getting back into a flow. Maybe you found a flow that finally worked for you. And then, like I said, when the interruption happened, you were kind of like, oh man, like I'm thrown off, and you are really struggling to just get back in that same mindset and show up for yourself in that way. So before we even get started, I just want you to take a breath and remind yourself that you are worthy of the same grace that you extend to others. You are not a robot. That's one of my most listened to episodes, is that you are not a robot. And sometimes we need to be reminded that every day isn't going to go exactly according to plan. And that's actually okay. If you're really walking with God, you have surrendered control of your life to Him, and He runs the plays. And so give yourself some grace if you haven't been feeling like yourself, if you've been trying to get back into that flow and you keep hitting some hiccups. Things like that happen. And it's okay to just pick up where you left off. You don't have to start from the beginning or feel like everything has to be perfect for you to show back up the way that you were before. Like, again, sometimes you just have to take what you have and keep moving forward. So before you go down the rabbit hole of wishing that you had shown up a different way, or wishing things had been different, or beating yourself up because you fell back into a cycle or a habit or all these other things, just take a breath. And remind yourself, like literally say to yourself, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for showing up through the midst of these life transitions. I'm proud of you for still having the desire and the mental energy to show up. I'm proud of all that you've accomplished before. Like, sometimes you really just have to encourage yourself, because these transitions can make you feel like you never accomplished anything. Like, don't forget that before the transition happened, you were building, you were working, you were making progress. You have to honor that progress and encourage yourself. So I just really want to remind anyone who's in that place that it's okay. Things are going to get better. You're going to feel better. Things are going to change. Seasons always change. And you can pick back up where you left off. And trust me, you're not alone in this process. I have been through several transitions in the past year that have definitely been unplanned, unforeseen. Nothing I could have done to prevent them. It just is what it is. But just trusting God's leading and knowing that He will supply me with the mental, physical, and, any other energy that I need to show up. And I may not be showing up in a way that I was before, but however I need to show up in this season with what He's given me is enough. And I think that that's a big point of what I wanted to talk about in reference to momentum is sometimes when we're trying to, get back in the flow or build our momentum, we're trying to really get to a place that we were before when we were exceeding at our highest level. And I think that's an unfair comparison when you are in a specific transition because you're not going to be the same person in every season. And I'd even go as far as to say that every season does not demand the same version of you. There are seasons of rest. There are seasons of building. There are seasons of grieving. There are seasons of just transition. There are so many different types of seasons, and it's going to require you to show up differently, especially if you have these factors that are outside of your control, right? Like if you have kids do not care about your schedule. Like there's always something that's going on that's going to require an adjustment. And so how you may have shown up in a season before where you didn't have kids, or a season where maybe you had more help than you do now, you're not going to be able to show up that same way because there's a limitation there. And usually that limitation is time, right? So honor this new season that you're in and show up the best way that you can with what you have. Maybe another factor is your financial situation. Maybe there was a season before where you had more money than you do now. And so you were able to move a little bit differently. But now things have been a little tight. And so it's not that you have to stop what you're doing, but sometimes you just need to make an adjustment to use what you have in front of you to still get those things accomplished. And there's so much mental frustration that can come in those financial seasons because it's easy to compare your current situation to your situation before the financial transition had happened. And so that frustration alone can really impact your momentum if your eyes are not fixed on the Lord. And even sometimes when your eyes are fixed on the Lord, sometimes, your financial situation can be talking louder, but it's really important to say, okay, you know what? I can't change the season that I'm in right now. Like God is in control of that season, and I have to use what is in my hands now to move forward. So again, no matter what the factor is that has impacted your momentum or your progress, there's always something that we can do to make adjustments. And sometimes that looks like just taking a moment to get your mental health together, because without good mental health, you're not going to be able to move forward and make momentum for much longer. So definitely prioritizing yourself, getting back in your time with God, fasting, taking a break, right? Like maybe you aren't able to take like a big vacation, but go somewhere, sit outside and get some fresh air. Maybe you do need to put down something for a moment while God refills you, because again, things get hazy in these transition seasons and they get very tiring. And so depending on what's going on in your life, rest may be a good option for you right now. It's okay to take rest. Now, once you've taken this rest and you feel like, God has given you the strength to get up and keep moving, one thing that really has been impactful to me when it comes to building momentum after like a transition season or when life hits is something that I heard on this podcast my brother was listening to with Andy Frisella. And he was talking about that we are in control of the momentum. Sometimes we're always waiting on like an external factor, like going to a conference or listening to something to try to get our momentum going. And those things could definitely help. But he said real momentum, we are in control of. Real momentum happens when we consistently do the things that we did in the beginning to get the result. And I love this explanation because it just talks about the simplicity of just doing the things that you did before to get you to this new place. Now, they may not be the exact same things because we talked about the different factors that can affect our momentum, but just simply going back to the place where you found success, going back to doing those things that brought you to that result. It's as simple as that to regain your momentum. And it doesn't have to be with the same level of enthusiasm, right? Because when we start something and we find momentum, sometimes we have a lot more joy and excitement for it. But then after transition, maybe our response to it isn't exciting, but that doesn't mean that we still shouldn't do that thing in order to get that result. If it worked for you before, more than likely it'll work for you again. Now, again, that's not the case for everything, depending on what you're specifically doing. But 9 times out of 10, if you go back to doing the same things that you were doing to get that result, you're going to at least see some progress. And then you can make adjustments to whatever routine or habit you were building in order to, make it match for this season that you're in. And so I know emotional response is a big thing that I'm trying to move past. I'm trying to get in the habit of executing without relying on emotion, because your mood can kind of dictate what you feel like doing, or even what you have the capacity to do, because your mood usually is reflected in the things that you say. And sometimes even before you attempt a thing, you will speak over it. And then the words that you speak will make you feel like you don't want to do it. For example, if you're talking about working on a project, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, I just don't feel like doing this right now. Mentally, I just cannot even. Your words have gone before you and they've affected your actions before you even actually tried to show up. So a tip when building your momentum up is don't speak before you're about to do the task that you're going to do that you don't feel like it. If you're not going to speak something that's going to encourage yourself, just don't talk. Like, just let it be the first thing that you do after you spend time with God, and just let it flow. Like, don't even voice your opinion about what you're going to do, because your words do dictate your actions if you continuously say them over yourself. Like, even people who say, I don't feel like getting up, right? If you say that, you're definitely not going to feel like getting up. You may can think that in your head, but still in your body, like, get up. Don't worry about how it feels. Train your body to just do the things. The Bible talks about this, about guarding your mouth, right? Setting a guard over your mouth so that you're not speaking death over anything. You're not speaking against what God is doing, but for you also not speaking against what you need to be doing. Like, set a guard over your mouth and just be quiet and do the things. It will save you a lot of headache, and you will find that once you're already doing it, you're already building that momentum. So before we end this episode, I just want to give you a practical homework assignment if you're trying to build that momentum and how to start. Write down the first 3 tasks that come to your mind that you know that you need to get done, and just start one. It doesn't have to be the most advanced one. The purpose of building momentum is to actually get in the motion. So pick a task that's a light that you can tolerate and start working on that task. Just set 15 minutes aside. You guys know I'm a big advocate of small 15-minute intervals, because I believe that you can get a lot done during that focused time. So make that list, pick the lightest task on that list, and start working. Don't complain about the task. Don't grumble about the task. Actually do the task in silence, and you will find so much more just focus, because now you're focused on the task and not your emotion. Don't worry about having the perfect setup for that task. Don't worry about whether your lighting is right, whether you have a candle burning or the perfect notebook. Just simply start the task. Again, we have to break the habit of trying to get things perfect in order to build momentum. It's okay to just show up with what you have. It's okay to go to the store and get a cheap notebook instead of a high quality notebook for right now while you're coming out of that transition. What you have is enough. So, yep, your homework is that simple. Again, we're not trying to drag it out. We're not trying to be perfect. We are trying to build momentum. So I hope this episode was helpful for you. If you found it helpful and you think someone else will, definitely text the link to them. And I will talk to you guys on the next episode.